everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Hazmat Guys. Today we're going to be diving a little bit into some of the resource software that is out there, and we have the absolutely lovely Dr. Christina Baxter with us.
Thank you.
Who's going? No, she's lovely. You can see him now. We're doing a little something different today. We got some video, so if you're listening to this on the podcast version, feel free to jump out on our YouTube page and actually watch us as we walk through chemical.
Yeah, you're going to want to see this in video, I think.
I think so. It'll show you exactly how to maneuver through the tools and how they can help you make your scene a lot easier to run.
So so just to catch everybody up, and we've mentioned this software multiple times across multiple episodes and stuff like that. We had the V1 was available for computers and tablets.
Yep.
Right, and now V2, we're getting a sneak peek.
We're about V10 probably, but right now we're getting a sneak peek on what will be the next version release, probably later in June or July of this year, 2019. So it will be. So first of all, for folks who have not used it before, if you're interested in getting the Emergency Response Decision Support System, you can go to www.chemicalcompanion.org. And that was kind of the old name for it, but because it broadened out into so many other areas of response, and we'll get into some of those, but we changed the name to the Emergency Response Decision Support System. But originally, back in 1995, when we started this program, it was called Chemical Companion.
Okay, so let's take a look at the software. Actually, take us for a walk.
So this is the main home page. So when it's kind of your landing screen. So when you download the software and open it up, this is what you see. So this is really your known chemical search tool.
And this is on Windows, so you're going to see basically the same thing on an iPad and everything.
Yeah. The iPad is just a little bit different in terms of what your drop-down boxes look like you would expect with any iPad version software. That you'll have a little bit different of a feel with the touchscreen.
Okay.
And we can show some of that here as well because this is a touchscreen enabled computer. But it's the same software, same information. There are two versions of it. One is a military only version, and then there's the civilian version. It's a free software, so we do give it away to first responders and military personnel in the U.S. and partner countries. So it's not something you have to go out and buy, but you do have to have a need to know to access the software, because as we'll get into it, you'll see there are different things that can be a little bit sensitive.
Okay.
So you always have a home page here. So if you want to get back to this page from anywhere within the program, you just click on the home button. So just the house up in the top, like any other software.
Okay.
On the top right, you also have the cog and wheels, and that is your settings section. So the first thing you want to do is go in there when you download the software. You can look at the current version, which this one says 4.6. If you're logged into the internet for any reason, you can check for updates. Right now, I'm just running free. You don't have to, this is not a web-based tool. You download it and have it local on your computer. We still do that. We can make it web-based, and our trial versions are, but the reason we have it standalone is that in case you're in an area where it's service denied, or if for some reason you've had to, an event has occurred which is required that you block off signal for a certain area, this will allow you to still have full access to the software. So you can go to set up whatever you want your start tool to be, but most importantly, pick the country that you're working in.
Okay.
Okay, so in this case, we've picked the USA. As you can imagine, that's going to give us different units of measure than the rest of the world.
Okay. We still use that savage.
Yes,
units.
so we're still a bit savage here, yes. But in this case, it's going to always revert to the US standards of measure.
Okay.
If I went in and picked Australia, it's going to go to their standards of measure.
Okay.
But it's also going to pull the appropriate exposure standards and things for the area you live in.
Oh.
So the U.S. exposure standards are different than the Australian.
Is that
the
from
New
the
Zealand
Coriolis
is
effect?
different. No,
No.
not at all.
Oh, okay.
And their bathwater does not drain the other
doesn't.
way. But just in case anybody was wondering, but it's just more of they have different. It's just like California probably has different levels than Georgia.
Right.
So
Everything in California causes
everything
cancer. So.
Yes, everything is. It's much different out there. So one thing that we can ask, if you would like, is what we call the Experience Improvement Program. If you want to participate, it'll ask you right when you download the first time. And all that's doing is capturing your number of clicks you do to get to a certain thing. So that way, if we can optimize software later, you don't have to do that. You can do that. Either way is fine.
But it's not like you're getting my phone numbers or anything. It's just
No,
helping improve
no.
the software.
It's only doing like a click stroke, so we can see how many clicks it took you to accomplish a given task.
That's help us help you.
Yes, and that just makes it so we can streamline to say, did they really need to make 5 steps to get there? Is it a training issue or is it a software issue? And so we keep track of those things throughout.
Cool.
And then there's a lot of different things that you can set up. So first off, there are, and we'll get into all the different ones, but there's a whole bunch of tools that are available, and each one of these is a separate decision support tool. And if you, as you're going through, and this list gets longer and longer every version, but as you go through, if there's certain ones, let's say, for some reason, you don't ever do bomb scene response. Do you need to know what the size of a crater in the ground following an IED, how that would relate back to the size of the IED? If you don't need to know that, you just go in and uncheck it. It doesn't go out of your software, but it saves you screen real estate. And I'll show you where that's important later. So I'm going to keep them all on, so if we want to see things, we can. But you can also go through and make all your decision points easier by going to PPE and checking on all the different types you have. So let's say we have suits, and I'm just going to pick and say, you know what? I wear Kepler suits. So I'm going to come down to Kepler, and I'm going to say, okay, I keep their Kepler 500, their Frontline the 300, maybe a Zytron 300 I'll throw in there as well.
Okay.
I'm going to add those in and say, those are my standard gear. And that gives me a splash suit. It gives me some vapor tight suits. And that way, every time I do a search for PPE, it's going to bring those to the top of the list. Well, everything's in there. This is in alphabetical order on the list. So if you have Kepler, you're going to be halfway down the list every time trying to find it. And so this way it brings it to the top. And I'll show you where that shows up later.
Okay.
Same thing for respirators. We're going to pretend we're FDNY.
Okay.
And we're going to click on and say, we've got them all.
Okay.
Okay. Now, most fire departments around the country are going to probably have, well, they're all going to have the SCBA. Some will have PAPRs, but some will also have full face APRs.
Okay.
Most people don't have everything known demand available, but if you do, great. Okay, detectors. This is really important. So all the detectors that you keep in your inventory, I'm going to go ahead and pre-fill those. So that way, every time I start up the software, it's going to pre-fill those so I don't have to look every time. So I'm a Draeger girl in terms of my colorimetrics, so I'm going to go in and say, okay, Draeger, and I picked colorimetric, and so now all the different Draeger colorimetrics in this system are going to show up. Okay, so I can go through and do all of them, but let me just pick a couple for fun. I'll say we have the ammonia tubes, and let's go in and say we have chlorine tubes, which is likely. Okay, I'm going to get an acid gases tube because that's going to be really important for some things. And even like a hydrochloric, we'll add those. And let me see simultest. So simultest 4, or simultest series.
So this taking time in the beginning really saves you time later on.
Taking time right now, and when you get into the series later, you'll see how important that is.
Yeah.
Because if you do it once, you don't have to ever do it again. Doesn't mean you can't add things.
Or change if I
Or change it, right. And you can change it in the middle of the flight. You can do whatever you want. But having it set up really saves you a lot of time. So let me just pick some electrochemicals, and I'm going to then come down and say, I'm going to go to Ray now because I'm showing the things that I always use. So let me see. Ray, they had ammonia sensor. Let's say I had hydrogen sulfide. Of course, we're going to have that. And so when you can see there's a mini ray and a Q ray in there, that's because they have different correction factors for the different ones in there. So I want to make sure I get the right one. Okay, and then I'm going to get hydrocyanide, and let's add our CO, and let's put those in there. Okay. Now,
so you're not saving as you're going because it's saving as you're going.
It's automatically putting them down there on its own. So now I'm going to pick Pro Engine as an instrument, and I'm going to go to electronic. It pulls up my AP4Cs, and as you guys know, I love that instrument. It's one of the underutilized instruments out there because it tells you so much information.
Agreed.
Let's see. Oh, I know what we missed. Everybody has to have a PID, right? So let's go ahead, and I'm going to pick my Ray PIDs. I don't know why this is coming up, but let me go in and say, I'm going to say a PPV and PPM. Okay? So now all those sensors are automatically picked. So I just picked them as I went. And I'm going to show you where that comes really important later. Same thing, ventilation fans. Okay, so positive pressure ventilation fans that you always keep on your rigs. Go ahead and pick those because we're going to try to use those to evacuate chemicals from different spaces.
And they have different CFMs.
And they all have, yeah.
So what if I have like, oh, I don't know what the hell I got. I got a brand X. Is there a generic in there?
There's not a generic one, but there is a generic section where you can go in and say we're going to use standard air as ventilation versus, so let's say you have, and we'll do an example of a vehicle, a suicide, and using the ventilation of just natural air from the vehicle, and that is really important as well. So let me just pick, let's go with Ram Fan 150, so a standard one. We can actually pick a couple and add them in there. We'll add a Godiva as well. So we'll just put those in, no big deal. And then fire, what types of foam do you have? We'll say we have everything. In the team members right now, I can show you some uses for it, but there's not a lot of great things that you'll apply it to right now. Really apply it a lot to some of the fire specific things and some of the evidence specific things for law enforcement.
Oh, for like preservation and
yes, preservation of evidence and who you're going to assign to certain roles.
Okay.
So
that gets a bit deeper.
I couldn't like put some of the B team in there and then let the computer know, hey, listen, these guys really aren't that great. Don't trust what they say. No, okay.
No, we don't want you to go in and say, skip over these folks, assign these folks.
That's in
But what
V11.
you can do, that'll be version later. That'll be version just for Mike and Bobby.
Yes.
But in this case, you could say my A shift guys are always these guys, and that way they default up.
Yes.
And then the way I like to do that is for tracking fire exposure.
Ah.
So, and I'll show you that one because I think that's really important.
Okay.
Now, so we've done our setup. That's
Okay.
the whole setup of the system. Now, every time I upload a new version of software, because those new software versions come out, it'll email you once you're registered for a new version. You upload the new version. You don't have to do this again. It saves all those settings on your computer locally, and as you upload the new software, it automatically inputs them.
So did you
do this
click
once.
save?
No.
It's saving as you're going.
That's right.
Because I didn't see a save button, and that gets me nervous.
There actually is a save button, and it's in there. It's the Christina button. Okay, because I'm the same way.
Okay.
I'm like an obsessive compulsive on many things, but save is one of them.
Right,
Because I've lost so many things.
So just in a little bit of background, how, from the point that a manufacturer would have a meter available to a first responder to the point that that meter is in the software? If it's a brand new meter, how long does it take before it gets into the software as a choice?
So we only put in the information that we have publicly available to us on the meters. So we have data on a lot of different meters. We have data on some meters. Let's say one example of a meter that's not in here, although we have the data, we don't put it in here because there's some ITAR restrictions. So the Smith's LCD 3.3, great piece of kit. We have the data for it, but we can't put it in here because of some ITAR sensitivities.
Okay.
And so it's like that. And as vendors give us the information, they provide the information and say, you know what? There's no ITAR on these things. We can put it in, incorporate it. But if there is ITAR for people, is just making sure that we don't provide information out to other countries that may have defense sensitivities.
Okay.
So it's quick and easy. We add it in, and then the next software release it comes out. If we have to push out a new release, that's okay as well. So I'm going to go back to the home page. I'm going to try to. There we go. Okay. And now the first thing I'm going to show you is now, let's just look up a chemical.
Okay.
So let's pick ammonia. Okay. So I type in ammonia, I click on ammonia, and now it pulls me up into the basic properties. So this is my chemical properties page, and this is the known chemicals area. So you can see they're not in alphabetical order, all of the different chemical properties, but they're in the order I usually use them. Across the top bar, you're always going to see the warnings, hey, it's a corrosive gas, the CAS number, the UN numbers, and what IDLH is. And so that's just something we always put up there, because we want you to always keep it in your head. So no matter when you're tabbing between things, it allows you to see the data. So in this case, something of real importance, what are my lower explosive limit and my upper explosive limit? As you can see, as I hovered over there, it's actually pulling up your definitions as well. So if you don't know what that means,
so much.
you can actually go in and put the definitions to pop up for you.
Oh, I love that.
I think it's really important, things like ignition temperature, flash points, where people forget what they mean and the differences.
Yes.
It pulls up the definition for you.
I like that.
Okay? So now, these are all just different things. I wouldn't call these decision support tools here. These are information resources.
Okay.
Okay? And we'll get into the differences between these. So in the tool, in the system as a whole, we have information resources, we have lookup tables, and then we have what we call decision support tools, which will help you make decisions.
Okay.
And there's calculators. There are simple calculators. So the first in this basic thing, I'm going to go to exposures first. So I'm going to go up and say I have my ACGIH, so industrial hygiene. I have my OSHA guidelines, and I have my NIOSH guidelines. They're always going to be in the same place every time. And then you have your military exposure guidelines. Now, if that's all for protecting the responder, right? That's the worker
Right.
protection. If I want to go to community protection, I click on this tab. Now I've got all of my TEELs, my Eagles, all of those are there. And you can actually go and hover over them to get your definitions as well. So now we know, if we weren't aware, that the Eagle 1 is where we're going to start thinking about sheltering in place versus evacuation. But if I come out to Eagle 2, we're going to start seeing irreversible serious health effects.
Yeah.
We may want to start evacuating people here. In Eagle 3, sometimes if we don't have an IDLH known, we end up going to the 30-minute Eagle 3 because that's very similar in terms of its response and what it is. So this is all about protecting your community, and personnel is about protecting your operators on the scene.
Okay.
And that's where the numbers are. If for some reason you want to compare things into milligrams per cubic meters versus parts per million, just click on the button and it'll automatically calculate everything for you. So you're not trying to do calculations on scene. Okay, so the way we've often built this was all designed by responders for responders. So everything was designed based upon exercises. So anything during the exercise that you looked up or tried to calculate, we've tried to automate. And so not only does it make it helpful to the responders, but it keeps people from calling me in the middle of the night. PPE, this is where you're starting to see those Kapler products that I picked come up to the top of the list.
They're bolded, they're
Okay.
at the top.
They pull right up to the top, so everything else is still in alphabetical order of different suits available, but the Kapler ones, because I chose them as what I had, automatically pop right at it.
So it's not telling you, hey, this is the suit you should be wearing. It's just telling you, based on your suits, this is what you got.
This, yes, and this is how they compare to this chemical. And this is vendor-provided data on material only. One thing I want you to remember, the limitation to a tool like that is that I'm going to step back into my other role as the chairperson of the Chemical Protective Clothing Standards for NFPA. The drawback to using standard breakthrough times to determine what PPE you're going to wear is that most materials are actually very safe and protective. It's the seams and interfaces that aren't.
Yes.
And so the breakthrough time tables are kind of giving people a false sense of security a lot of times because it's all about the material, not the seam and the interface. And so don't just rely upon that.
Gotcha.
This is why I always am a proponent of buying a certified ensemble. So if you have 1991 standards and 1994 standards are ensemble standards, where everything's tested as a whole,
Not just the patch.
not just a piece of material.
I love it.
This is just a piece of material.
Okay.
Okay? If we go to respirators, this is just going to the NIOSH list of respirators, canisters, and cartridges that are certified against this material, which is
Okay.
ammonia.
And there's no bolds there, so that means
Nope.
we don't have one.
We didn't choose a specific one there. We just said we have canisters. Detectors. Okay, this gets really interesting now. We're starting to get into things that can be a bit different than what you'll see anywhere else. This is where we list all the detectors in the system that are direct reading or cross-sensitive to the threat material. So you can see AP4C, direct reading, PIDs, ammonia tubes that we had, they all came to the top. Okay, all of these are the things I chose. Now, I'm going to start seeing all these in alphabetical order as well.
What do you mean the direct reading versus, how would I tell the difference between a
Okay.
cross sensitivity and a direct
So
reading?
let's scroll down to one that doesn't say ammonia. So let's see, here's an aniline tube from Draeger. That aniline tube has an asterisk next to it.
Okay.
And that tells me that while it's not meant to measure ammonia, it's cross-sensitive to ammonia.
Oh my
So
God.
if you want to use some different detectors in the field, and you want to say, okay, both things are showing up, so we know that, for instance, let's use the AP4C as an example. The AP4C for cyanide and ammonia, I'm going to see that nitrogen channel light up, right? But I'm not going to know which one it is. What if I don't have an ammonia-specific tube or a cyanide-specific
use an
tube,
aniline
but I
tube.
have an aniline tube? I can actually look at that, and I'll show you a way to trick into that real quickly in a minute. But let's just quickly go through some more here and the basics. So reactivities, again, that's just the things to watch out. Don't put it with. Isolation distances, straight out of the ERG.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay, ERG, straight out of the ERG. It'll always say which year ERG, so when the 2020 comes out, it'll come out with a new release with it in there. Medical goes into all your symptoms of exposure, your paradigms, your ABCs, your basic life support, and your advanced life support protocols. We're in the midst of updating all of that as well with some of our other partners in crime, so that will be great. This is a new tool. I was talking to you about this the other day.
Yes.
This is the fire tool. And you'll see this is a tab, and what it does is if you have a fire involving ammonia, okay, so now you know the fire extinguishing guidance, suitable extinguishing agent is water, as a fog spray, streams, or steam. Carbon dioxide, dry powder, nitrogen, or inert absorbents like sand are also suitable extinguishing agents. No attempt should be made to extinguish fires involving ammonia gas cylinders unless they are in open or well-ventilated areas, and only if safe to do so. Cool the cylinder with water and manage as a controlled burn until all fuel is consumed. Escaping an unburnt ammonia may create a flammable atmosphere and is readily ignited, causing fire and explosion.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
So now, if we have an ammonia fire, we're going to be measuring for ammonia, right, to make sure any releases we're measuring. But we also need to measure for its combustion products. So we're going to be looking at nitrogen dioxide, things of that nature as well. When that will get interesting is when you get to some of the things like PAHs and things and say, what are the other things I should measure for? Okay? Decon, this is a combination of known information that's been out there, as well as some of the research that we've done in partnership with University of Adelaide in Australia. And in terms of that, these are all skin-based studies where we get human, freshly excised skin from humans going through body changes.
Yeah.
And so generally tummy tucks, and we get that fresh human skin and we challenge it with chemicals and say, what amount on the skin as a gas is going to go through the skin or come off the skin? And what is the effect of decontamination on that?
Oh.
So in this case, for ammonia, if I have less than 500 parts per million, then I want to just put people in air. I don't want to do anything else, because if I put water on it, I can actually make it into ammonium hydroxide, make it worse, right? Because now it's sitting on the skin.
Just let the chemistry happen.
Yeah, I'm on, gas off for this. When I get to the 500 to 2,000 range, I can start considering other things, especially if they have a localized spot of sensitivity. Give a little wash there. And as I get over 2,000, again, most of the time, if it's just gas on, it's going to be gas off.
Right.
And this is great because this really minimizes and saves us on decon time, logistics, the framework, everything. And so this is the first time we've been able to take real scientific data and put it out into the field into users' hands quickly. And we have full tools for that as well. So that's known chemicals. So
Okay.
quick, easy thing to do. Now, I alluded to it a minute ago, so I'm going to come back up here and go to chemical comparer,
Okay.
because that's known tools, but it's going to do a couple of different things. So let's say I had ammonia. So let's click ammonia. You see it come to the right. And then I said hydrogen cyanide when we were talking a minute ago. I spell it right, though.
Oh boy, I'm out.
Well, if I go up to the top one, I don't have to spell it right, which makes it easier, because that's like a Google bar.
Oh, okay.
So it goes for the phonetic as
Oh,
well.
okay.
Thank God.
Yes.
Because that's a Christina tool as well. So now I've put those two over there. Now let me say compare. Now it's going to pull up everything side by side. So if I was down to those two threats, and I want to look at it and say, okay, my explosivity limits, where am I going to be measuring?
So are you saying, wait, are you saying like I have a tractor trailer, I have a box, I have a liquid, I don't know what the hell it is, but I think it's one of these two things. I could put it in and do this and then say my physical characteristics, my...
Yes. And then it gets even better where you can go to isolation and say, okay, if I don't know which one it is real quick, let me go with my bigger isolation distance, which is 3,300 feet if I'm using hydrocyanide. It's only 490 if I'm using ammonia. So now we want to figure out quickly then, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
I don't want to have a 3,300 foot cordon. So let me come back down here and say, let's go to detector. And here are all those detectors again, but side by side now. So we know that that ammonia sensor was going to go off for ammonia and cyanide. Okay, it's cross sensitive. So now let's come down here and say what one of my sensors isn't going to.
Yes.
So if I can come down, I can see that my PIDs are only going to hit one. Okay. you can start pulling things out that way. So
And
my
CBS set
AP4C,
one will go off of the other,
that's right.
and so I can conclusively
I can
tell.
now go and say, you know what? I was measuring my AP4C. It was showing it was nitrogen containing, so I knew it was one of these things. Now I can go and say, give me that simultest. I can go in and say, okay, it's not that. Let me now see if it's this. Now we can go back to that aniline tube again and say, you know what? The aniline was cross-sensitive. Boom, done. Now we've got our detection and our confirmation, all with things that were just cross-sensitivities. And this is a big thing that I love about detection, is that people worry so much about things being cross-sensitive. I love it
I
when
think
they
it's
are.
phenomenal.
It's
another
incredible.
tool.
If the manufacturers tell you what those cross-sensitivities are, you can make that work for you, and it's like you have all kinds of new tools.
Now, if I walk into an unknown, and let's say my CO meter goes off,
Okay.
all right, is there a way for me on this to turn around and say, okay, my meter reading is saying CO, what are all the other different possibilities?
Right now, that's not one way to do it, but you could go in and say Detector, which is another tool,
Mm-hmm.
and let's say what detector was saying that. So let's say the ray was saying it. Okay, and that one we're going to have carbon monoxide is going to be a different one because we don't have it in that way. Okay, so I'm listing out all the different manufacturers of things that can work for CO, because that's going to be a little bit more of an issue, and see if there's any of these up here. They're not going to be able to measure it because none of these are made to measure that. Okay. But that's why it's giving you this whole list down here saying, okay, CO is not one of the electronic detectors, really,
Right.
that you're going to want out of this tool. So go into these tubes and look for cross sensitivities like formaldehyde,
Okay.
or measure a CO tube and just pull that up. That's a tool that we have done. We just
Okay.
haven't released yet. So
Cool.
it's
A little preview for the future.
yeah, that one has all the different ones in there. So, and I just pulled up a tool that I haven't shown you before. So that one was Detector. I just pulled it up. Let's say we were talking about ammonia and hydrocyanide a minute ago, and we were talking about it being the AP4C. Okay? So now in the AP4C, you just see bars on your display. But remember, this is sold as a chemical warfare agent detector. So was it ever meant to be your ammonia detector? Not really,
No.
but it is. So let's say my instrument is reading 4 bars. So I
Okay.
just clicked on 4 bars. And then it came up down below and said, for 4 bars, that means we're between 63 and 158 parts per million.
That's
Now,
pretty cool.
it pulled up down below, you see this chart that's saying yellow? That chart will show up repeatedly. And you'll see it being green when you don't need respiratory protection, yellow when you do, but it doesn't have to be SCBA, and then red when it goes above IDLH and you have to be an SCBA.
So you give it one more bar.
Let me give it one more bar.
Still didn't do it.
And it's because it's over the limited detection of the
Right.
instrument. So AP4C is one of those instruments that is amazing because it measures so low. So where most of our instruments measure much higher,
Yes.
this is actually really great because it measures very low levels. So when you use it in combination with other
Totally
things,
tracking.
it just gives you.
So
Now we can also say over the range, and now the AP4C would actually be measuring flashing. You're over its detection limit. Now it's telling you
Hey.
you hit 788 parts per million of ammonia or higher.
Or higher.
Or
Right.
higher. Not telling you what it was. We're saying it's out of the linear range of the instrument. So you hit this part, watch out. Get something else to measure where you are. Reality is, I'm going to say, come back out till you get down to that like 300 range and set your zone.
So we get a tremendous amount, when we use the AP4C a lot, is we'll get bug bombs, things along those lines.
Pesticides.
Pesticides.
That's why.
So
It's great for that.
This would be great for that, right?
Mhm.
I know the pesticide, I know the how much I got on my P channel, and it can tell me whether or not what my parts per million are, and then I can cross-reference that
Okay.
with my levels, my exposure levels, right?
Yes, so on malathion, IDLH is 19 parts per million, and that's above the maximum detection limit of the device. So it's like your malathion, you're way below where you're measuring. Okay, so let me pull out, let me clear this channel. Go over here, and you can start seeing that you've got measurements that are down here in these levels. It's way
Way
tiny
low.
levels.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your AP4C would have pegged if there's malathion
Coming
anywhere.
up the stairs kind of thing. Yeah.
And you're going to get it in the right channel, and you're just going to focus on
But
that.
all these things add up to decisions.
And what we've tried to do with this specific tool, a detector tool, is to pretty much take the AP4C, which is sold as a chemical warfare agent detector, and say, you know what, guys?
Let's hack this.
If you're going to wait to use this instrument for that chemical warfare agent day,
Yeah.
chances are good you're never going to use this instrument, thank God.
Right.
But you have it. Let's use its whole ability and make it work for you. And so what I like to do as well is, we had bars to concentration where we were just saying, what's it read? I want to say, what does ideal H show up as? Okay?
That's
Ideal
what it
H
would
for
look like.
malathion is going to flash red at you on phosphorus and sulfur completely. If I want to show the exposure standard, okay, you're going to have 3
3
on
and 2.
phosphorus, 2 on sulfur.
That, I got to tell you, is absolutely phenomenal. Because if I'm the technician and I go in and I say, yeah, you know, Chief, I'm getting a 3 on my P channel and a 2 on my S channel, nobody has any clue what that means. All right,
That's
well, can I evacuate? Do I have to evacuate? Do I have to
And that's what we're
ventilate? Do I
relegated to
have
telling a lot of our technicians
Right.
is just read back how many lights are on what channel, and I'll figure it out outside.
And that's why my favorite job on the hazmat team
Is
was
resource.
research.
I agree
I'm like,
100%.
I get to be research. I'm like, woo!
Yeah.
Most people are like, oh, I can't go in. I'm like, research?
Oh no,
Yes.
this is my wheelhouse.
So if you get some to go in and say, okay, guys, we think it's probably malathion based upon the things we're seeing, why don't you go in and when you hit 3 bars on phosphorus and 2 bars on sulfur, you know that's the exposure standard.
right. At
Okay.
this point, we have to make an
That is the point where we're going to start to think about doing something. Below that, because this measures so low,
right.
you're still good.
Because you're not even on that chart yet.
No, you're green way down here. That's not even measurable. It's at 0.07.
So I'm in shorts and flip flops up to this point.
Okay,
I'm
now
joking.
I
I'm
do not
joking.
consider shorts and
I'm
flip flops
joking.
appropriate work attire. We've had this discussion.
All right.
But if you're a lifeguard.
If you're a lifeguard, you are not a lifeguard.
Very good.
Today. So malathion's one that I put. Oh, parathion, another one you'll see. Okay, again,
That's
show the
2.
exposure standard 2 on phosphorus. Show me ideal H. It's gonna go flashing. Oh, it actually just total maxed it out. It didn't go flashing, so it didn't go over. So really nice, but you're less than a part per million, and that instrument is already maxed out.
Wow.
So great tool. Now take it a little bit different going in detectors and say, I want to go into detection environment. And seeing we're going down this road, let's go with some fumigation and say, we think we have a fumigant. Okay, this is going to make it so it kind of walks you through. This is when you get to where that last tool was a calculator. This tool is a true decision support tool.
Can I ask you one thing? So as we're doing all these things leading up to this point, are any of my past entries into the AP4C and all this stuff falling into what I'm going to right now?
So,
Or are they
yes.
all independent?
So every time, and I'll show you in a minute, you'll see these little bars. It'll be a little box with an arrow, and that box with an arrow means you've used this before. Do you want us to pull it?
Oh.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry.
So let's go in, and we'll say, have you already taken care of oxygen, flammability, and radiation hazards? Because we all know, if we don't detect these things first, our instruments may not be
So
operating
it's giving you
properly.
like, hey, consider this.
Yeah, I like to do that, and since it's not measured, discounted, it's like,
Yeah, there was
don't
no
go
reason
anywhere.
to.
Okay, so I'll say, hey, it's not controlled for structural. Don't go anywhere. It is controlled. I'll let you go now. Notice if I said no, are you sure there's no hazards? Click it, then it'll let you go.
Ah.
So if you don't answer these properly, it's not going to let you go on to the
You
tool.
can't move on.
It's making you stop and think and say,
Yeah, you can't just blow up.
if there's a structural hazard, should I be going in there for this?
Right.
Okay, so let's hit next. Now, this is where it's really important. All those detectors I chose populated right away. Otherwise, every time I do this tool, I've got to populate them.
Okay.
So now I don't have to do anything because I've already got them all in. So
Just
let's
right
hit next. Now it's telling me of all the tools that we had put in, these ones, the Ray Systems PIDs, the AP4C, the ammonia electrochemical cell, the hydrogen cyanide electrochemical cell, the Simultest Draeger tube set, as well as the ammonia tube, are useful in a fumigant environment. Whereas the chlorine and hydrochloric acid tubes aren't going to be because they're not fumigants. So fumigants of interest, when you pop down here, the things that we're really going to look at are ammonia, ethylene oxide, formaldehyde, hydrogen cyanide, methyl bromide, phosphine, and sulfurofluoride. So let's come forward Now, I need to put in what my instruments are reading. So as you see, it's the same instrument reading interface you'd see on the instrument. So here's your array PID. So let's go ahead and say this is the PPB one. This is a typo. The new guide will have ppm there.
Okay.
Somebody found it recently. We had never even seen it.
So would you, because it says ppm, is it .001
It's actually,
or is it 1?
it's gonna be measuring in ppb here. So
25,000 ppb.
yeah, that's ppb.
Got it.
And then I'm gonna go to the ppm and say 25.
Okay.
See what I'm
got
saying?
it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's actually one that we haven't fixed yet. I'm going to say that the nitrogen channel's maxed out,
Okay.
but not overmaxed. It's at the highest. Okay. Let me say the ammonia is positive, but let me say the hydrogen cyanide is positive as well. I can go in and put in a set and reading. So let's say, what's that, 200? You'll see what I'm doing in a minute. Here's your simultest. So here's the things it's measuring for. Let's just say negative on all of those and positive on this too. Okay, and hit finish. Okay, now it's telling me for cross sensitivities, it could have been methyl bromide at 42.5 parts per million, ethylene oxide at 325, or ammonia at 272. I did nothing in there that could measure formaldehyde. So I still need to go back and measure for formaldehyde to rule that out. But with those readings on those sensors, I've ruled out phosphine below 0.0015 parts per million. I've ruled out sulfurofluoride at 0.076 parts per million, and I've ruled out hydrogen cyanide at 1, based upon the readings. Because it takes into fact all the cross sensitivities and readings. So we didn't get anything in the phosphorus channel on the 8B4C or the sulfur channel. So we're at the limits of detection of the instrument. We can't say it's not there, but we can say it's below these limits of detection, and these limits of detection are below threat levels.
I hate to say this, but this is going to definitely take the B team guy with this tool is going to put him as an impact player now.
Well, that was the hope. Okay.
I gotta tell you, this takes the A-team player
and makes him
a
incredible.
superstar.
So when
or
you
her.
look at this, what I like to do is now pick Open Chemical Comparer. Because now I have 3 chemicals and one that I haven't measured for, right? That I'm not sure which one it is.
Okay.
So let's open them in Chemical Comparer. Okay, it pulls them right up, and let's go back to detectors and find out what detectors can I use to start pulling those apart. And so it puts all 4 of those beside each other and says, okay, with all these detectors in the system,
God. That's
these
the
are
second time I
things.
said that.
Yeah, so this to me is one of the most powerful tools I've ever seen. And I'm not going to tell you where the brain came from for this one. It was not me.
Are they close?
Yes, they're close.
God.
Crazy. I mean, each of the algorithms that is used to figure this out is just phenomenal amount of data.
This is an incredibly powerful tool, not just for a first responder, but for like a local planning board.
Yes.
Or for the person who's running a
Tier
hazmat
2.
team, right? And says, okay, what stuff is in my area? What should I be looking at detection-wise?
And that's one of my biggest pet peeves with people like, what should I get for detectors? What are your favorites? Well, what's your threats?
Right.
Right.
It
Give
all
me
depends.
your little table. I mean, I'm the queen of Excel, so give me your Excel spreadsheet. Put your chemical threats from your tier 2 right down the left-hand column. All your detectors across the right. And then go through, do they detect or do they not?
Check.
And if I don't have at least 2 for each thing, what do I do to fill in? Now you can look at the detector thing for that chemical and say, what detectors fill it in? Do I need a 2 as a backup? Or do I need to buy something different?
Right.
So when I have those gaps, now I type in the chemical comparer, pull up the list, and I know what detector I can buy to fill in my gaps. It's a phenomenal tool. Now, you can turn it around and make it a tool for salespeople. That's
Of
just what
course.
we don't give to them. This is only for responders. So in a sales tool, they could actually go in and say, here are your threats. Here are our products that can fill in your
Address.
space quickly. So yeah, so that's why we keep this. That's another one of the many reasons. But let me show you a couple more tools real quick.
Yeah, please.
I'm not going to show all of them because it'll just be too much of a day. But let's go into decontamination real quick because this is
Okay.
another unique one. Here's where you were talking about. If I've already typed something in, why type it twice? Okay. So here's all the chemicals we've typed in so far today. And so let's say, well, let's go back down here to ammonia. We said it could be at that 272 parts per million. Okay. So I'm pulling it right in from the detector environment, and it's saying, okay, all you need to do is finish now. Because ammonia at that level, it's below ideal H. We know that putting it on people or on objects, you're better off putting it in the air and just getting ventilation.
Now this is taking into account your fan selection. This is where this all
This
plugs
doesn't
everything.
even have, not yet.
Oh,
This
I'm
is
sorry.
even simpler. This is just saying ammonia went on your skin and it'll come off your skin at this level without any assistance.
Because it's green.
You just go on outside, get some fresh air. You're gonna be good. Now, positive pressure fan, you might increase ventilation,
Even more
might
good.
work. Unless you're pushing the fan towards the other people. Not a good idea. I had one of my guys do that once. It was quite funny. I laughed a lot as he choked. But again, survival of the fittest for some of these things.
Natural reaction.
Okay, one thing that gets me every time. Inside a tool, you use this bottom, back, and next.
Okay.
You want to go between tools, you use the top, back, and next.
Ah.
So you'll see me oftentimes, I use the wrong one. It's okay. Like if I went back here, I'm going to go back to the last tool I was in, chemical compare.
But you can go forward.
I
right
can go
back
forward
into
right
it.
back to where I was. Couple of different things you want to look at here. If I want to, anytime you see the chemical name with this highlight, I'm not going to get too close to it because it'll hover and bring me back because mine's touchscreen sensitive. If I go there, it'll just bring me back to that chemical page. So quick in and out of everything, and then you can hit your back and it'll bring you back where you want to go. So let's come back for a minute here and say, okay, you know what, this other person, these are the people that were around it, but I do have a person with some liquid on them. So let me look at them and say, okay, they had a liquid. Is it on the person, skin or clothing, object, both? Let's go with both. Now, as you can imagine, it's going to start to ask more questions because now you have a liquid exposure, which can be very different.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go with, I'm going to say the legs got splashed with ammonia. Okay, is there any off-gassing happening?
Yeah,
So let's say yes. Okay, now what do we know about off-gassing? Let's say it's only about 50 parts per million. Okay, now it's going to pull me back out and say direct liquid contact. We can use air, but let's probably go into water detergent. Right on that spot, use air for the rest of the body. For the objects, we can use water or we can use a dry decon, vacuum and cloth to get that off. And for the move to any of the gas contact, move to fresh air. So now you've got your whole scene, and you said the people that were close in that got the liquid splash on them, we might want to spot check. In this case, I can do something as simple as taking a FiberTech wipe, wiping it off, absorbing it off of them, and then maybe use a little wash water. But the people that were on the outer skirts who didn't have direct liquid splash, I'm just going to put them outside and let them air off. Now, I also use this sometimes, maybe a naughty way to use it, but I still do it. And what I'm going to do here is come back to the very beginning. And the reason I want to do this, because this comes up time and time again. What if you got a call and you can see it's an ammonia plant, and I can see that there is a person that is within my line of sight, and I don't have time I want to do a snag and grab. Right?
Okay.
I want to be in my turnout gear and do a snag and grab.
Okay.
If I have line of sight, I'm going to consider it, right? Because I have an SCBA.
Right.
We know if it is below, in this case, below 700, but I'm going to say, what is it, 400, where we have to, let me go and say 400. Okay, and it's telling me 300 was ideal H, I'm over ideal H, but these people are not, it's just the air we're going to get to. So I know they're still going to be below lethal limits, so let me go up a little bit higher. I think lethal limit's going to be around 2,000. I don't want to go into that level, and that's going to tell me that stop. Okay, so now I can keep playing around with it, saying, okay, if I can see that person, we know they're below lethal. So can I come down? Let's go to the old exposure standard. We'll go right below it. So the old one was 700, right?
Okay.
So let's go to like 650. Say, okay, where are they exposed? Well, let's say their whole body.
Whole body.
Okay, and let's say it was less than 15 minutes and they were wearing just regular clothes. Okay, we start getting into things of, do we need to wash them? Can we come out? Can we just go in with our turnout gear, come back out, take the turnout gear off, let it off gas? It's allowing us a lot more flexibility knowing when does it interact with skin. And so we know that we can go in and do a snag and grab if we have line of sight.
As long as it's yellow, we can do snag grabs. Red, we stop worrying about that.
Any red, you're not doing anything, because that's when it's going to start interacting with your skin fast. Yellow is where we're going to start considering, you know what, you're getting between those areas, you're going to want to wash. So if I get a stand and grab at this level, I'm going to have them come out. I had turnout gear on, take turnout gear off. I'm going to put that in fresh air, and then I'm going to have them have a shower. Because at these levels, they might actually start to feel that little tickle. If you've ever had ammonia exposure, you know the tickle I'm talking about. That tickle is the starting of interaction with your skin. And so we've actually gone and measured out to lethal concentrations, and we've measured at IDLH. Sometimes if we get anything at IDLH, we'll go lower and measure at exposure standards, so that in all of these skin studies, we've actually measured at operationally relevant levels. So if I can see somebody still viable, then they're not above the lethal concentration, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be viable.
So
Now I can start pulling around numbers.
let's say, and I'll use an example that we had. I have an ammonia leak in an ice cream plant.
Okay.
And I want to turn around, and I'm fairly comfortable with putting pH paper on, and then when it turns, saying, okay, I need to change my PPE. But let's say I want a more exact number. I'm a very exacting person, and I look at it and I say, okay, I have an ammonia at this level on my PID. I'm gonna get changed into the next level of
Okay.
clothing.
So let's start it first with, let's go in and say, the people going in, we want to give them some numbers to use.
Okay.
So let's first go in and say, all those people that are going in, and we're dealing with ammonia again, so we'll just pull up ammonia again, and we're going to go in this case, let's do a PID. Okay, let's do the part per million, because this has a huge correction factor. So a lot of people, if they're not really paying attention, they don't realize that there's a 10 times correction factor here.
Yeah.
So let's go in and say, okay guys, when you read the exposure standard of 25 parts per million, it's actually going to say 2.3 on their screen.
Which is
Big difference here.
yeah.
If I send somebody in and say, hey, your 25 ppm is your zone, if they don't know that the exposure standard is, well, they're going to know that when the exposure standard is 25,
the exposure.
they're going to divide by 10. It's 10.9 really.
So I would call in there and say, when you hit 2.3,
That's right.
you're putting on your
That's
SCBA,
right.
guys.
So what if, like, now you chose Ray, right? We have a Ray PID up to 10,000 parts per million that has the conversion factor ability
So
into it.
I'm not a fan of people changing conversion factors.
Okay.
Only because I've been there when they forgot to change them back. And so if you're calibrating against isobutylene, just keep it at isobutylene. You can tell them, hey, you're going in for ammonia, 2.3 is your measure, and then if we want to do IDLH, let's show IDLH to set our hot zone, 27.5.
And that's actually where they're going to be putting their SCBA on.
That's right.
Is at basically IDLH.
Yes.
That's a problem.
Yes. If they thought they were going to be doing it at 300, it's actually 27. So these are really important for when you're sending somebody down. I would rather have you just say, here's your sensor, set your zones, however you set your zones or however you mark them, the demarcations are going to be at these levels.
Okay.
Just because if you don't put it back, then somebody goes down range. Now with ammonia, great, huge correction factor, so they're always going to be err on the side of safety. But what if you had something, you had a small correction factor, and then you sent them
Back
for
in.
ammonia?
Well, I'll
Big
switch
problem.
it. I'll switch it if I know, like, because the correction factor is tenfold, right?
Right.
So the PID that we have only goes up to 10,000 parts per million. If I switch it to ammonia and I have a high concentration leak, I can get better readings on the higher level.
Right.
So if
Potentially.
I'm doing
Most
that,
of them don't work well. Their linearity goes away around 1,500.
Oh,
parts per
really?
million. Yeah.
Okay.
When you start getting up to those high levels, you might want to start validating it with the LEL reading.
okay,
Okay, because the LEL reading
is
will
gonna
be helpful.
So in higher concentration, now is that true with a lot of chemicals that are going to show up on the VOC as well as the LEL, where if you start getting those high readings and you
Yeah.
start to dig into the VOC and you turn around and you go, wait a second, these two don't match, I should take my LEL readings over my PID.
I start to match them up and just start looking at the numbers, and you got to really play around with it to see that, because
Okay.
it does get quite different when you get to high levels with a PID.
Okay.
They're really great at that mid range, but once you go over that, they start to fluctuate quite a bit.
Okay.
And you're also going to start poisoning your sensor quite a bit too, and getting coatings on it. So you got to remember all that. I want to show real quick though, one of the tools that I find fascinating as well, besides the detection environment.
Yeah.
This is another one, and we have this, and I've gotten called from you guys to help on these before. So chemical suicides,
Yes.
or in the military context, binary weapons, binary devices. So let's go in and say, Well, here's an example. There's been a jihadi literature out there for years saying to make binary devices and planes and different things. So in this case, let's go ahead and pick. I clicked on something else by mistake, so let's go up to binary reactions. Okay. Now there's, I think, 600 or so different binary reactions in here.
Okay.
And it's just going to help you walk through what the results would be. So if I know the reactant, I'm going to pick one. First, we'll go through one that's a weapon based. Okay. So here's a solid. We get this all the time as a threat. So potassium cyanide or sodium cyanide. Okay, you guys know exactly what it's going to make. But so sodium cyanide. Let's say they had a quarter pound. Not a lot, right?
Okay.
Okay. Now, let's say we have an acid. Any acid will do, but let's pick something like, well, hydrochloric. Now, you notice it's going to say common concentration, so I can pick that. And let's say that they only have a half a gallon of it.
Okay.
Now, think of the device, right? It's a binary weapon. They're going to take a powder or they're going to put it in a solution, and they're going to take a liquid. They're going to mix them together and make a resultant gas. Okay, same thing as any of the chemical suicides. This says you're making hydrogen cyanide. Are you in an enclosed space? So we'll say yes.
Because we're saying we're in the car.
Well, in this case, we're saying it's a binary device. We're probably not in the car. So this one, we'll say, is it a vehicle? We'll say, no. Now I want to say, what is the space? So let's use this room. Okay, so this room is probably...
Oh, it's a calculator.
Is a calculator.
Oh, I love
So
that.
if I want to do cryogenic containers, passenger vehicles, any of that. So let's do the rectangular to start. We'll say we are at around 30 feet by 30 feet and 10. Okay, that's going to be 67,000 gallons for this space.
Okay.
Accept it. Okay, we are not doing too good, even at that small amount. We're at 222 parts per million in the space, and IDLH was down at 50. So, sorry, only one of us is going to survive, and it's going to be me. Okay, and so let's say next. Now it's saying, do you want to calculate the ventilation requirements for this space? And this is where I told you earlier to put those fans in. So here's yes. Now, which fan do we want to use? So let's go through and we can pick any fan that we have. So let's just pick one. Okay, now we're going to go through. We want to get to time weighted average, or do we want to go down lower? We don't care, you know. So right now, let's say we want to be able to work in the room and get evidence.
Yes.
Let's get down to TWA or lower. It's going to tell me you need to get down to 10 parts per million, 3 1/3 minutes. Okay, so with that ventilation system set up out to this space, probably give us a few minutes. We're probably going to go 3 times that, right?
Yeah.
Just to keep doing it, and then we can send the guys in, monitor, let them go in and do evidence collection. Wow. So now it's telling you how do you do the space. So let's go ahead and do another one. Let's come back to the beginning and pretend we're doing the car suicide. And that's a bit different, right? So I want to say, let's come back here. I want to get back out. Okay, so yes, I'm going to say it's a solid. Let's say, do you want hydrogen sulfide or do you want...
Yeah, do hydrogen sulfide.
Okay, so let's get... Okay, we'll get a little bit persnickety and use the one that was used in Australia. Ammonium sulfide. Let's say, we'll go with small amounts again, right? Half a pound. Simple. Okay, is the acid known? Sure. Not reactive with water, so the tool will focus on just the acid. So a lot of these are reactive with water as well, so it takes that into account. Okay, so in this case, let's go up. I usually just go with sulfuric. And we'll just pick, I'm just going to go with half a gallon. Let's go with 0.25 gallons. And we'll use the most common concentration of battery acid. And say next. Okay, you're making hydrogen sulfide. Is it enclosed? Yes. Is it in a vehicle? Yes. Okay, now pick the vehicle. Okay, so is it a car, small, mid-size, full-size, SUV? Let's just go with a full-size car. That's going to tell us that it's 28,740 parts per million is what you're going to get max. So let's go to next. Now, what we're going to want to think here is how do we evacuate that car? Okay, you're going to break a window, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and why are we breaking the window?
To vent.
We're going to vent it, but we're also going to try not to get a spark.
Yes.
Okay. So we're breaking the window. Let's first get it down to TWA. Okay. We'll just say, what's the level? And this is natural ventilation of a car. With that window broken, we're going to break a window on either side, so we have cross ventilation. It's going to take us 13 minutes to get cross ventilation. Okay?
Down
This is
to what level?
down to time weighted average.
Down to time weighted
Now,
average.
we could go in less than, say, I want to go into less than 5% of LEL.
Okay.
Okay? That's going to allow me to get in and turn off the car,
Mm-hmm.
things of that nature. Let's do that. Okay? So in 3 minutes, I could actually go in, turn off the car, things like that. Where I'm below that 5% of the LEL. Now I know I'm not going to get a spark. That's going to cause me a problem. And so you start doing things that way. So the natural ventilation choice right now is with the vehicles. Okay? You can actually go in and manually put it in for the other things, but right now we have it as natural ventilation for the vehicles. We'll add it in as another tool later to the other things. But that just allows you to kind of go through that whole scene.
And it's assuming no wind. It's just natural
It's actually,
vent.
we actually went with natural vent at the lowest wind level. So we wanted to be very calm.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Because we don't want, because it's going to be faster. So
It's only gonna
we're
be
always
enhanced
erring on the
by-
side of safety.
Right.
So in all of these different things, if you have to make an assumption, the assumptions are listed below. So one thing I didn't show you repeatedly were all these notes. Okay, so ammonium sulfide is not reactive with water, so the tool is going to focus on just the acid. Okay, here are the things that it makes as products. So true ammonium sulfide is only stable in the absence of water and at temperatures below 0. So different things that you're going to see. So there's all kinds of truths, tricks, information down below for you to learn from. So as you can imagine, all of us that work on this product, we are all educators as well. And so one of the things that we always try to do is to do passive learning into all the tools. So as you start doing it, you start thinking about these things over and over again, and it's like a passive learning tool as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of built as a training tool. And I always tell people, the last time I want you to start using this is on a scene, if you haven't played around with it. It, to me, is a fantastic tool for setting up scenario-based trainings. Because I know we're going to run low on time, I want to show you one more that is kind of a highlight today. I'm going to show you firefighter guidance. Oh, I'll show you two more tools. Let me show you Lab Identifier first.
Okay.
Okay, Lab Identifier. If you were getting a call as support for a lab, we'll first go and say, okay, it's an H&B lab. Let me go and say it's a peroxide. And let's say, of course, it's going to be TATP because that's the way life just goes for us some days. So we're going to view the lab. Now it's telling me here the chemicals I want to look for. If I just want to compare them, it'll pull them up for me. And I can start looking at exposures, things of that nature. What would I do for decon?
And your detectors.
Okay, so you're getting everything set up for your support of that scene. Okay, so this is when they're serving a warrant. Now, let's say instead they went and they didn't know what they got. So let's come back out to Lab Identifier and say we want to go chemicals observed instead. So let me go in and say, well, we'll think fentanyl, aniline. Okay, so I'll click on aniline. Aniline is in 32 of the 35 recipes for fentanyl. Okay, you can start seeing all these things. Now, up here, you're going to see 3 things with a yellow bar button, and all these others with green. These 3 with yellow are more dangerous to you as the responder than the ones in green. So that's why they came to the top.
Okay.
Not that they're less of a problem as an ingestion thing, but there's a nitromethane recipe, and there's a methyl nitrate and a mescaline recipe that we want to look at. Those things can be more problematic for different reasons. Okay, but let's just pretend, let's say it's all fentanyl is our worst case scenario. What's the lab going to have? And now for an all fentanyl lab, these are all the different precursors you'd be looking for. So now it's saying, you got this, are you seeing these other things? Are they there? You can go through and start adding other materials. So let's say sodium hydroxide. Okay, now it's starting to pull that all fentanyl method still up there because of the hazard, but now you have 2 of 7, 2 of 7, 2 of 7 starting to show up. So let's click on one of those. View the lab, and now you're starting to go, okay, look for acetic acid, dichloromethane, propyl
And
chloride.
if not, you go back one step and
Yep,
you start putting
and you
more
can
stuff.
start putting in everything you see. And that will tell you all the different types of things that can be made. Because a lot of times what we're seeing now is all these poly labs, where we very rarely go on a drug call or a lab call for an explosives lab where it's just one thing. There was a call DEA and ATF did together in July that had all kinds of it. It had methamphetamine, it had MDMA, it had ecstasy.
So on Mondays, this guy.
But it had
this,
THCP and it
Tuesdays
had fentanyl. This is the one where he had his homemade glove box he was making to make fentanyl in. And all of that in one lab.
Did he know he could get it insanely cheap and easy
Yeah,
online?
there's so much.
this
That's what
guy-
we're doing.
I would say with this guy, he had the ill intent was not high. It was more the challenge.
I
You know,
totally
he
understand
was
that.
28-year-old male living at home with mom, and get this, he had a girlfriend too. So
Oh,
that was
good
pretty
for
proud of
him.
I thought that was nice.
Was it the same mom and girlfriend?
No, no,
Oh, okay.
no.
That's good.
It was Tennessee Georgia line.
All right.
But so let me tell you the other one I wanted to show you, which is the firefighter guidance, because this is what we hear about all the time with what do we do on a call? Okay, how do we know if our turnout gear needs to be washed? You know, we have all these things. So let's say you guys are going to a fire.
Okay.
Now, I divide things out and I say if you go on a fire to a scene that you ever did a pre-plan of, okay, for a hazmat, it's a chemical fire.
Yeah.
Okay, I treat those as the hazmat goes. So let's say we have a chemical fire.
Okay.
Now, we have cold zone operations, we have exterior operations not in the smoke, exterior operations in the smoke, and interior operations. Okay? The minute I say one interior,
What do you mean by an operation? A team went inside?
this is what you're doing, your operation. So let's say you are on an entry team.
Okay.
You're going in doing fire suppression.
Okay.
Or even going in doing search. You're going to be interior. Mike, because we don't let him near things with flames.
Of course.
What? Why not?
Okay, because you get burnt by an ember if it's a mile away. Okay, you're going to be in cold zone operations.
Okay.
So, okay.
So
Well,
that's
actually-
per person. Every person you put
Yeah.
in another number for.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you can do this. So let's say we're interior operations. We're just doing you right now. You're going to come out and have to decontaminate on site. Okay. This means there's chemicals that are being broken down, likely some of the PAHs, that are going to go through your turnout gear,
Onto the skin.
deposit onto your skin, and will actually make their way through the skin and start to have actual things happening prior to you having time to go home and shower. So less shower you on scene. And when I mean, you know, everybody wants to use wipes and things, which they're fine, but it's a whole body coverage we're worried about. It's
Right.
not just those faces
not
where these
just-
big particles are sitting. Those big particles are sitting as the big soot everywhere. But those things that made it all the way through your turnout gear and are sitting on your skin now,
Right.
in areas that might be moist and warm,
Right.
it's going to go through.
Under the t-shirt, under the shorts, that kind of stuff.
Under the
That's
shorts,
the
more
problem.
so than anywhere. Need to
That's
wash.
really interesting.
Need to wash. And wash your hands because secondary contact.
So move me out to, like, let's say the cold zone.
Okay, let's say your cold zone, in this case,
I
is coming
can
green. Yeah, oh yeah. So what we might have happen is those people that were doing exterior operations might be the people that I have stay and do overhaul. And you folks, if you don't have capability of showering on scene, I might send you back to the station to shower as soon as physically possible and have the other guys doing the overhaul.
So what's the reason of having a number in there? Like, does it really
Because
matter to
it's-
have 200 guys?
No, that's not the number. The number is the number of air cylinder swaps you did. Entry, yes.
Now
So
I'm getting
if
it.
you went in and out, so no matter if you went into that chemical fire at all,
That's one.
you're done.
one time.
One and done. Okay?
For the
You went
entire department.
For each person that went in.
Got it. I got you now.
Okay.
I'm tracking you.
For all those people that were on exterior operations in the smoke, they're one and done. Okay? So think about that person who's your pump operator. How often is your pump too close and they're in the smoke? And how often are they wearing the respiratory protection? They need the respiratory protection. Okay? But exterior operations outside the smoke, they can actually go 3 times before they have to get their gear cleaned. Okay, that's 3 cylinder exchanges. Or you can use them, say they were just that one, then they went in and did an interior op
Now they have.
for cleanup.
Right.
Now they're doing this. So it's starting to tell you based upon thousands of fire iterations, and you guys have seen the data on all those, that now we can actually start calculating up what's your worst case scenario of what you're
Mhm.
exposed to. Not exactly what you're exposed to, but we know that in these
Potentials.
heats of fire, all these pHs are made, and we know which pHs will make it through the turnout gear in onto your skin.
And you're talking about purely products of combustion
Yes.
based upon statistics of thousands of
Thousands, yes.
So they don't have to know what chemical it is. It
Right.
could be an entire nursery.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where there's thousands of chemicals, it doesn't matter. We're just going overarching and we're
Yes.
just going with.
We're going with some of the worst case scenarios. So for me, chemical fire, one of the things I think of that you would come across, auto body shop.
Right.
Auto body shop, the worst.
Right.
Okay? Any auto body shop, I consider automatic, chemical fire. Pesticides. Okay, so if you're going on a house, and let's say you're going on a small business that was a lawn care business, chemical fire. Okay, so all those people, you know what they're storing. If you think of that in your head, I'm going in there in that garage, they got a pool, chemical fire. Okay, so now I could also go in and say, let's say it's just a regular room and contents burn. So for you, I'm not going to go the asbestos route for you, but let's say no asbestos and fibers because you know what's going to happen with the asbestos. Now we go and say we had one interior operation. Let's say it was a prolonged burn here. Let's say it was a basement fire and we're trying to do multiple levels. Okay? By the third time you do an exchange of your cylinder, now you're going to secure and launder your gear. The firefighter's going to shower when they get to the station. And when we say shower at the station, we mean a lukewarm shower. A shower
Soap, water.
no more than the temperature of your skin.
Gotcha.
Okay? Dial that temperature down to where you can stand it and take a shower. We don't want your pores to open more. Okay? We don't want you getting into a sauna.
Makes
We don't want you
sense.
getting into a hot tub. We want you getting into a cool shower and getting that material off your skin, not opening up the pores and pushing it into your skin. Okay? Soap and water. And soap and water is your friend for all of these things. The one thing proven time and time again to work, soap and water.
Right.
Okay.
I love it.
Yeah. So this is where your personnel, so if you want to start tracking yourself or your team, you can start tracking if you had their team members in there. And you can start saying, okay, they were exposed here, here, and here. And then you can start saying, okay, they had 5 chemical fires on these. Yeah. Okay. One thing I'm going to show you before we wrap this up. Number 1, there are tons of tools. And it would be all day to sit here and go through all of them. But absorption is a really fun tool because you can go here and say, okay, there was a diesel spill. Okay. And what do you guys use? Do you use like kitty litter or?
Yeah.
Okay. So kitty litter. Kitty litter is one of the worst things we have for absorbents.
Yeah.
Most everybody uses it. Okay. And let's say we had the volume of the chemical. We're diesel. Nobody ever thinks about the size of the spill. You see a spill and you see it going out 20 feet. You're like, mother of God, we've got this much. Okay.
I got 50 gallons leaking from a
So let's use the spill calculator. Now we have a spill. The default is about 2 millimeters thickness. So when you have that 20 feet by 10 foot puddle, it's only 5 gallons.
Yeah.
So this is what we used to always tell people to get that bucket in the station and pour it out on the ground and say,
Just say how many?
it's not that big, guys. You see it, they're like, oh my God, it's gonna be 100 gallons. It's 5.
Yeah.
Okay? So accept that in there. And now it's telling you that if you were using kitty litter, you needed 69 pounds of it to absorb all that. But if you went and used peat, if you had more money, you're FD1, you've got everything, right? Okay.
Green
so
stuff.
less than 4 pounds.
3 pounds.
Yep.
Wow.
Okay. But if you used organo clay, kind of in the middle of the cost structure there, 8.5 pounds. But let's go all the way out to what some people still use, the vermiculites and things. Okay, 87 pounds.
Wow.
So it's starting to let you plan, or the other way is saying, I have so much absorbent, and let's say I have 50 pounds of vermiculite, I'm going to be able to soap up 20 pounds of kerosene diesel. Okay, so now you can start looking at what you have in your storage, what you're carrying on the truck, and say, this is the size spill I can handle
Mutual aid.
with this.
Right.
Call back, storage, whatever you're going to do, whatever your plans are. For people who don't have the assets of FD&Y, I used to like to keep a list of Home Depot, Lowe's. What did they
Who's
have on
got it,
hand
right.
usually? And could I call them and get it for the scene? Because now I know if I can do peat at 10 times the capability,
Yeah.
20 times the cost, can I balance that?
Right.
Where do I get that return on investment? And go that way. Same type of things exist for neutralization. So if you want to go in and say you have an acid, you just come down to the pH tools, okay, and say neutralization. And let's say somebody spilled battery acid, so let's say sulfuric. And we'll use the most common, battery acid. And again, let's use their spill. and we're going to say 10 feet by 2 feet. It's only a gallon. And what do we want to neutralize with? Now we start seeing that all of the things we can neutralize with show up. Okay? You'll see that if I had it spill being a base, it's going to just list acidic things. So let's go with sodium bicarb.
Yeah.
Okay? 8.5 pounds. With a 25% excess you're going to want to put out to make sure, right? Let's go in instead, say, soda ash, because that's another one that we all use quite a bit. I've got it as a, okay, 5.3 pounds. So starting to figure out what you have on hand, what you can do with that, and that will help you planning, okay? You can go back through and say, how, in all our acid spills in the past, how much did we spill?
Right.
On average. Then what should I carry? And in the space you have on the truck, or if you need to have a trailer or another truck that comes with it. It's just those types of
So,
things.
I mean, theoretically, then I could make a slurry using 5 pounds of soda ash.
Well,
and
That's a fantastic approach, which a lot of people don't realize. So let's say you come on and we have this 5 pounds we know we need. Let's go ahead and make a slurry. And there's some backpack sprayers you can get. Or you can even use some of the old pesticide sprayers and things with a wider nozzle, wider bore nozzle. And actually go through and spray it quickly instead of shoveling it. Because you save a lot of space,
Even
much quicker,
distribution.
even distribution, fast you're out of there. And it's just a quick way for you to get these scenes up and running. And I tell you, in business continuity, makes and for you guys especially, it makes a huge difference. Because 15 minutes versus 30 minutes that block is shut down, it's a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
And so when I look at that, I'm like, business continuity makes a huge difference. So now, there are many more tools, so I won't go into all of them, but there's things from thermal protective performance of your gear, how close can you get.
They're gonna have to just play.
It is a great tool to play with. And if you have questions, please just go ahead and email Canister Life. So if you're using APRs, but all of those are tested at, like we're sitting here, you want to test it at the type of work you're doing.
Yes.
Then you go in and choose the type of work, and it'll tell you all the, so that had millions of data points behind it. We actually did machine learning algorithms across that data set to pull it in, which will tell you how long it'll take till you get breakthrough on that filter. So you can do your filter exchange times. So binary reactions, we have things like bomb threat standoff cards. So that's just your card. So these are lookup tools, lookup tables. They're not active except for that you can change the amounts, all that kind of thing. But yeah, just tons of tools, lots of playtime. So make sure you
This
get a
is
chance
incredible.
to learn how to use it.
really is.
And learn how to use cylinder response tools and those types of things that will help you mitigate a scene from start to finish. And so as we, obviously there's so many things that we could add in, and we just keep adding as we go. But it's been kind of a labor of love for many years. Most everything that's done on this is done as a voluntary basis. So most people, some people that work on the programming side get some pay, but most everybody is volunteering their time so that we can put this out for first responders at no cost still.
When do you think this is going to be coming out? This version?
This new version should be out, I would say, end of June, early July 2019. And then everybody who's a registered user will get an email to upload the new one.
So check out Emergency Response Decision Support System.
And it's at www.chemicalcompanion.org. And please, the registration process, if you have a government email or for an agency email, use that. Because when you register with your Gmail and things, as you can imagine, this is listed as protect as FOUO.
Right.
We have to do searches to figure out if you are who you say you are, if you have need to know, that kind of thing. And that takes time.
That does.
And as we're all volunteers doing that, it takes time out of our regular jobs. So we will do it, and we'll try to find who you are and make sure, start making phone calls, make sure you have access. But if you have a work address, all the better. It makes it so much simpler and fast. So you register. So when you register on the website, so you go to chemicalcompanion.org, you register. It sends you an email first to make sure you're not some kind of phishing site. You go into the email that sends you, and you click on that and say, yes. I am a human. And then it sends us an email where we go through and approve users. Okay, again, first responders, government employees. If you work for a private company, unfortunately this version's not free. You can contact us and we can tell you about other options. But this is the free version for first responders.
Excellent.
So And the company who writes this is actually, so I just am one of the many SMEs that help them with the logic. The company that writes it is actually another company out there, so they do all of this for free for the users. So small business, and they just think that that's worth it for them.
I have to say, it's probably one of the best resources that is out there.
I'm blown away.
It's just get in there, get in it, because the more you can use it, the quicker you can learn it, the less cumbersome it feels when you actually need it. So.
Yeah, it's been years in the making. As I said earlier, we started in '95, and at that point is working on a Palm Pilot, and it was all about chemical symptoms and looking at observable medical symptoms and figuring out what the chemical was for the '96 Olympics. And so back then it was in Visual Basic on a Palm Pilot.
Wow.
So it's come
a
full
long way
circle over
since
the many
Palm Pilot.
years. And an original proposal we had written to develop this was for DHS the year they opened.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's crazy to see where it is today when we go back through the records. It's like, this is just amazing. But again, it was the influx of some of these young guys, the computer software engineers that volunteer with us, and they're amazing. And their ideas, things I never would have thought of because I don't even know any of that. Just pretty impressive.
It is good.
So again, try it out. If you have ideas, things we could add, let us know, because some of us really don't have much life, and this is what we do.
I love it.
So
Thank you so much for coming on and helping us out.
thank you
Yes,
guys.
thank you.